Big G, good morning. How are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. I don't if I'm the media number one pick, then we're not a very strong media group.
Well, that
But
is
That's
that,
true.
I don't think that needs to be said, Glenn. We all know this. Everybody's got visuals of Buddy Sanji carrying a briefcase down a sideline.
We saw Penamsky try to sprint
Ed
40 yards.
Gilbert's the guy you're thinking of.
Thank you,
Ed
Glenn.
Gilbert.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah.
Real quick, put a bow on this recruiting for LSU as they continue to be in the transfer portal. But what did you think of their overall early signing period and what they're continuing to do with transfers?
Yeah, so I think they filled a lot of holes. I mean, you look at some of the positions of need that they were really heading into the offseason needing. I think, cornerback, really all the secondary help they could get, defensive end, offensive line, tight end. You saw them stack up at tight end. So really talented freshman class coming in. I think it's ranked number 5 or 6 right now on our Go 247 rankings. So, it's just a really strong class overall. I think Zalance Hurd is a name that you should be absolutely watching as a guy who can come in and potentially take some snaps early in his career. He's a really confident guy, really stellar athlete, and has some playing experience with another LSU tackle in Will Campbell. I'm really excited about Zalance. I think he's going to be a really talented player here. You talk about Deshaun Womack. He could fill a huge need here on the edge with BJ Ojolari and Ali Gay moving on from the program. So, I think they've done a nice job of really, relating to these recruits in a full year now that they've had to recruit them. And that's really important. I mean, that's the most important thing when you're recruiting a lot of these high school guys, that you have a plan for them, that you get to know their families and themselves, get them around the program, get them around the coaching staff. And they just seem to be hitting it out of the park, and that's translated over to the transfer portal as well.
You mentioned Zalance Hurd, Glenn, and you can add some historical reference to this. It's been a while before the state of Louisiana has produced offensive linemen at the rate of guys like Campbell, Emory Jones, and now Zalance Hurd, even Tyree Adams and Bo Bordelon and Fitzgerald West in that mix as well. How rare is this run on O-linemen right now in the state?
It's pretty rare. I mean, I'm with you. I can't really recall a time period where LSU just seemed this set on its offensive line because of the in-state talent they've been able to grab. I think it's one thing to be able to recruit these guys, but it's another thing to see them develop and be able to play early in their careers. And you've seen that this year with guys like Emory and Will Campbell. I mean, I remember, a couple of years ago when Emory Jones was really off the radar, and he had that, I think, 4 offers in a span of an hour from Alabama, Florida, LSU, and maybe another LCC program was thrown in there as well. But he really blew up there, and he's only taken that and really just grown and developed, and you've seen him become an extremely valuable piece to what this offensive line is going to be in the next couple of years. And so I honestly can't remember an offensive line group that has come in and has been this ready. You can throw Garrett Dellinger in there too. I know he's an out-of-state guy, but I think he's somebody that's ready to take on that opportunity inside now that you've lost Anthony Bradford. So just a really talented group overall. And I think that what they've done now is they're returning some continuity on that line next year, which is really important. But they're getting younger, and they're getting younger with really great talent as well.
All right, Glenn, here. We'll get to LSU here in a minute, but Georgia just wraps up back-to-back national championships. Alabama just closes the number 1 recruiting class. Brian Kelly just gets 10 wins in his first season in the league. How do you see the SEC over the next couple of years here with the pecking order? How do you like the league and just the power of it?
I think there's absolutely a window here for LSU to crack into and make a push for a championship. I mean, you look at what Georgia's returning, what Georgia's losing, what Alabama's losing, and Bryce Young and Will Anderson. Just to headline a couple of those names, Georgia's losing Jalen Carter, obviously their quarterback Stetson Bennett, who's led them to 2 straight championships. So there's going to be some, I think, off-season question marks about who's going to fill in at that those quarterback spots for those two programs. And look, I mean, it's Alabama and Georgia. They recruit the best of the best, and they have some really talented players. But I think what's on LSU's side is that they're returning so much of their foundation here from year one under Brian Kelly. And look, I mean, all you got to do is go back to 2019 LSU and look at the continuity that returned on that roster. And if you can get similar work ethic from these guys this offseason, I think there's reasonable expectations here that you can make a pretty sizable leap in this offseason. And so I think the LSU has a chance at absolutely competing for the top spots in the SEC. And we all know that if the top team in the SEC is usually going to the college football playoff, and it's usually winning it. So I think there's certainly an area there for LSU to have some success.
How do you like this quarterback competition shaking out?
It's going to be the most interesting thing to follow. And we said that last year coming in with all the guys they had with Brennan and Daniels and Nussmeier and Howard. But I'm just going to be really curious to see what happens with this group. You have about a week now until the transfer portal window closes. January 18th is the last time players can enter their names into the portal. So there's still time there if somebody like a Nussmeier or Howard wants to enter their names, but I really don't see it happening. I think this is a program that feels very confident. It's going to have all three of its quarterbacks from last year returning for this spring session, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're going to give guys like Nussmeier and Howard chances to develop with guys that they know, guys that they've been around the program for a year now, and I think Daniels is going to go in with the number one job. But that doesn't mean that there's some quantum leap out there that Nussmeier or Howard can't make, and at least start to push him for playing time. I'm not sure you're going to see a true QB2 situation next year, but I think those guys are certainly talented enough to make their mark and to continue growing in the offseason and at least make this more of a discussion going forward.
The wide receiver room last year, it loses Kayshawn and loses a couple of guys like Jeray Jenkins and Jack Besh. But it seems like it has reloaded with guys like Aaron Anderson and bringing in Shelton Sampson and Jalen Brown. How do you view this rotation?
Yeah, I mean, how big is that Aaron Anderson pickup look now? I mean, when you talk about losing Kayshawn and Jack Bash here in a couple weeks span, I think Aaron Anderson's a guy who's from the state. Looked like he always wanted to be here, but was dragged away by Alabama for a year. I think he's got immense potential in this lineup next to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. I could really see him coming in and making an early impact. You can never count out guys like Kyron Lacey and Landon Ibieta growing, but or Chris Hilton, I should throw his name in there as well. But I'm really interested in this freshman class. I mean, they're only going to have, Kyle Parker, I think, is really the only one right now that is going to be an early enrollee. So that's an opportunity for him to really come in and make an early impression with the coaching staff. And I really like Kyle Parker. I think he's probably the most underrated prospect in this entire class. He just absolutely exploded in Texas high school football last year. He's so quick. He's so fast. Jalen Brown is another guy that I think you could throw into the mix there as a really speedy change of pace guy that LSU is really excited about. So I think there's going to be no shortage of weapons here. It's just going to be about how LSU wants to utilize these guys, how quickly they can come along, and most importantly, I think how Jaden Daniels develops as a thrower this offseason.
How much of the tight end becomes a focus here as they bring in so much talent at that position?
Yeah, I mean, look, we know Brian Kelly likes, the 2 tight end system, the 3 tight end system, even at times as well. So I think Mason Taylor's going to have some really quality backups there. I mean, the fact that, the only negative part right now is that they're all true freshmen, and you just really don't know what you're going to get at all of them. So I know Jackson McGohan is a guy that's going to be an early enrollee here. I'm really excited about Kamorian Pimpton. I watched him at the All-American Bowl game a couple weeks ago, and he snagged a 43-yard touchdown pass over like 3 defenders in that bowl game a couple weeks ago. Really athletic, really tall. I think he's a guy that can certainly come in and be a complementary piece to what Mason provides you as a tight end. And I'm excited about Mason Taylor's development as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had such a great freshman year that it's kind of hard to remember he was only a true freshman last year. And so another off season with Denbrock, with the tight ends, and with Daniels to really build up that camaraderie and chemistry. It looked like they had a pretty special thing going towards the end of the season. I think he's only going to get better from here, and he's going to be one of the bigger playmakers on this team next season.
Glenn, I don't know if you're hearing the same thing I am, but the impact of the tight end, both in recruiting, development, and in implementing that position of the offense, has been Terry Malone, the offensive analyst that has kind of been behind the scenes. Your name you don't hear, but spent extended amount of time on Sean Payton's staff with the New Orleans Saints. Jimmy Graham was an All-Pro under his tutelage. Have you heard the same on Malone and the impact he's made on that position?
I have, and I've heard a lot of great things about this support staff, this analyst group that Coach Kelly's brought in. I mean, it's what you want in a program. You want to have sound structure across your board, not just guys that are on the field with them, but guys that can be teaching them behind the scenes and laying out great game plans for them in terms of their weight training, in terms of their development. I've heard similar things about Malone. I'm blanking on a couple others right now, but their analyst staff I know is one of the best around, and Coach Kelly's done a tremendous job of filling out that group. He's grown the recruiting staff as well, so these guys know which players they want to attack and when they want to go after them. I think this is a coaching staff that is really highly regarded, and the fact that you haven't seen them lose any of these guys to other programs, I think is really, really important as well, to have that continuity from year to year with that staff.
Absolutely, and you've seen some of these analysts get position jobs, like Antonio Fanelas was picked up as the Illinois defensive backs coach. He spent a couple of years on the job, and then Pat Hill just got the defensive line job with Dion in Colorado, and he was an analyst behind Jamar Cain. So you can tell the value of the staff by the respect that they get. But Terry Malone's name keeps popping up on this tight end recruiting, development, implementation of the offense. All right, G, I can't get you out of here without asking you a little bit about the basketball program. Last night they fall to Florida. 16 turnovers turned into a lot of points for Florida offensively. McMahon and crew now 1-3 traveling to Alabama on Saturday. A tough spot. What have you made here of the opening of conference play?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me this at this time last week, I would have been super pumped about their start. But they've really struggled with the turnovers the last couple of games. They had 15 against A&M on Saturday, 16 more last night against the Gators. It's a team that's really struggled to put the ball in the basket. And when you're a team that struggles to score offensively, the last thing you can do is give the team the opponent turnovers and give them free reins at the basket. And that's kind of what happened last night. It's what happened on Saturday. And so it's kind of an ugly trend developing. I was a little bit surprised at just how, sloppy it was on last night after what was a pretty sloppy game on Saturday as well. They've got a lot of work to do. I think they've got to get more playmaking out of their guards. Missing Cam Hayes last night, I think, really hurt them. From a shot creation standpoint, you could tell they were really struggling to get into the paint, really struggling to get KJ the ball in the post, and they were just missing all of their threes. I mean, I think they went 5 of 28 yesterday on threes, and they just kept chucking them up and hoping that they would go in. And it just allowed Florida to grab the momentum there, and it just really wasn't a really great second half for LSU. But it only gets harder from here. I mean, you just mentioned Alabama. They got to play Auburn, they got to play Tennessee, and then they got to play Alabama again in their next 4 games. And that's about as rough a 4-game stretch in SEC play as you can imagine.
Great info this morning, big fella. Appreciate it as always. Make sure and read the work over at Go247. Glen West and the crew over there doing great work. At Glen West 21 on Twitter. Thank you, G. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.